He started making content on Twitch when it was still Justin.tv. He did like StarCraft 2 matches.
I remember when it was Justin.tv. Okay, so this is where I want to kind of get into my background with these kind of things. But I want to let DJ finish here because I keep interrupting him like every 2 words because my like scatterbrainness.
And he started doing debate content around 2016. Destiny apparently referred to himself as a libertarian before this, but then called himself a liberal when he heard another streamer call another streamer the F word. Anyway, in Destiny's debate content, he did a lot of arguing against white supremacists and alt-right figureheads. But now, here's the key thing about this, he kinda always did this from the center ground. Destiny has also admitted to using slurs in private and has defended this, in fact, in multiple debates. He's never been a communist or a socialist or an anarchist, and has in fact argued against those ideas.
Because, you know, if you're not far enough left, you're a piece of shit, according to people like DJ Mule here.
Ideologies from a capitalist viewpoint for a long time. In fact, Destiny is quoted as saying this about the George Floyd uprisings.
The rioting needs to fucking stop. And if that means like white redneck fucking militia dudes out there mowing down dipshit protesters that think that they can torch buildings at 10 p.m., then at this point they have my fucking blessing, because holy shit, this fucking shit needs to stop. It needed to stop a long time ago.
So yeah, this is the guy that saved Xanderhal. Neoliberal politics.
Okay. A lot of things to go into here, actually. First of all, let's start with the fun one. How I'm familiar with Justin.tv. One of my favorite channels on YouTube, and like what actually got me into this platform in the first place, is a video game commentary channel called Hellfire Commentaries. They started streaming on Twitch back when it was Justin.tv. I remember they first streamed, I think Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions was like the first big thing I saw them stream. And it was such a different format to me. They were like live chatting with the audience and things like that. It was cool. It was a really interesting thing. So I got to see, I followed these guys on there for a while, and I got to see Justin.tv eventually turned into Twitch, and I followed some of that for a while, but I've never been super big on like Twitch specifically. Destiny did get really big on Twitch, and of course Vosh came from Destiny's community. And this is the point where I want to get a little bit personal here with some stuff. For one, I had a similar experience with Destiny, or not Destiny, I'm sorry, with Xanderhal, where he said it was Charlottesville that made him really open his eyes and be like, this is fucked up. I have to turn around politically, basically. As I said before, I believed that I was essentially apolitical, is essentially what I believed. It wasn't until the murder of George Floyd that opened my eyes and made me realize, okay, I need to start paying attention because this is some crazy shit. Now, around that time was when I had already started watching Vosh and, content similar to his. So it was kind of just the perfect storm for me. But the debate that the debate that Destiny had, and the debates that Destiny had that Xanderhal is talking about, were in 2017. The protests against George Floyd's murder was in 2020. That's 3 years apart. Yes, it's true that Destiny has kind of, in my opinion, gotten worse over the last couple of years. But the debate that he had with JonTron, for example, was a super, super important and good thing that he did. Let's see. Debating JonTron. This was when essentially they debated over issues where JonTron was just very much he wasn't like outright saying, of course, that he was a, white supremacist or anything like that, but he very much kind of had this idea that, oh, well, if people want to have an ethno state and they want people to stay in their own lane and all that, like, they should be able to do that and different things. And no, no, that's never a good mentality to have, because it doesn't lead anywhere good. And people like Xanderhal seeing debates like that are very influential to people like him and a lot of other normies. I know DJ Mule seems to hate people being moved over and normies and all that, but this is important stuff.
Politics are inherently like this. They say, yes, you can have your rights as long as you shut the fuck up about your queerness, shut the fuck up about your blackness,
Wait,
have your rights as long as Xanderhal. Neoliberal politics are inherently like this. They say, yes, you can have your rights as long as you shut the fuck up about your queerness, shut the fuck up about your blackness, and do your job until you die in poverty like the wage slave that you are.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with the last part. It's kind of capitalism. But the other two parts, I'm really trying to get that fly. The other two parts, no. What do you... neoliberalism, this idea that, like, what is it called? There is... companies are all too happy to take LGBT things and try to, especially all throughout the month of June, try to be, oh, we're on our side, we stand, or we're on your side, we stand with you, all that good stuff. And, the reality is maybe some of them do care, maybe even some of the important people in the company do care. But let's be honest, a lot of this is about making a buck. It's all about the bottom dollar. That is more what this kind of neoliberalism would be like, it's definitely not about any kind of, oh, you need to shut up. No, it's not about shut up about your queerness and your, all these other, it's, oh, please, we want to hear more. We want to, we care so much. We're going to exploit you for all you're worth, but we're going to use your diversity to, make money off you. Now, I do think that diversity and representation are good things to have. And a lot of that comes down to the best way to understand the importance of representation, by the way, is not that you feel yourself represented, but that people like you, for lack of a better way to put it, are represented to other people who are not like you. Or to put it another way, it's not important it's not as important for minorities to see themselves portrayed positively in media as it is important for minorities to be seen by non-minorities, have them be portrayed in positively in media. Because if you have that negative portrayal all the time or no portrayal, it can help to foster that negativity and bigotry. But if you have that positive portrayal, you can have good things. It's why conservatives get so mad whenever there is diversity. Now, there are issues with kind of like, diversity for diversity's sake and stuff like that that I personally have. I want legitimate, actual representation. However, people that are going to complain about things like, we'll just touch on this real quick, because I don't know if I might go into depth on it someday in the future, but if we want to talk about things like, I think her name is Halle Berry, not to be confused with Halle Berry, Little Mermaid. beautiful young woman, by the way, of course. A lot of people, conservatives especially, really hated on this simply because why? She's black. And why do people often hate things like this? It's because it shows a minority, marginalized group in a positive light. And that will cause other people to be less and less bigoted. I know that for myself personally, because, positive exposure to new things, new people, new ideas is the best way to end bigotry. So that's why things like, segregation was such a big deal back in like the 50s and 60s. And I can speak personally from this as well, that when I didn't really understand and kind of, I don't know if I'd say I didn't respect, but I didn't really understand and, in all honesty, accept, trans people until I had a friend who was trans, who I realized, hey, this is a dude just like anyone else. They were a trans man who was at that point only socially transitioning. But, I didn't really understand it until I met somebody who I got to learn about it from them directly. And it wasn't like they sat me down and like told me about all this. Every now and then I might ask questions about things, but for the most part, we just hung out and they were a cool dude, Fast forward to now where I have a trans brother and a non-binary sibling as well. I never would have understand those concepts back then, but positive exposure to different things is how you cultivate and fight, or how you cultivate acceptance and fight against bigotry. Which is also why, as cringe as things like rainbow capitalism are, and the neoliberal stuff that DJ Mule's talking about here, it is important. Yeah, it's cringe. Yeah, it's inauthentic a lot of times. It's, but it is a positive thing at the end of the day.
Do not question the machine. You are part of the machine.
What's hilarious about this, and the reason that I'm bringing this up, is because this is exactly where Xanderhal sits nowadays. Albeit slightly to the left of Destiny, he does argue in support of trans rights and Black Lives Matter. In a follow-up to this video in the much longer How I Fell Down the Alt-Right Pipeline and Escaped, he immediately starts by saying,
I also wasn't even a leftist when I made those videos. I was still identifying as what I now know to be a neoliberal.
And then claims to have become more progressive, but only really says that he's a leftist and doesn't really go on much from there. He does say that apparently he was planning to read The Conquest of
Do you need to go through your entire, ideology when you're trying to just explain something? He might not really know. He might still be trying to figure it out. That's fine. Aren't we all just trying to figure out our way in this world? Shit.
Read live on stream, but I can't find that on his channel anywhere. So it's likely that he read a bit of it, thought it was going to be too boring and sacked the idea off. Which is actually fair enough, because I think that reading theory on a live stream is extremely boring content, and I definitely would not be down for that. But
then why did you just criticize him for it? See, this is what I'm talking about. He'll hold these standards that he either has for Xan or somebody else, maybe even himself, and then he doesn't hold anybody to those. He just did it in the same sentence, sets up a standard, and then says, but I understand why you don't do it. Then why the fuck are you criticizing them for it? What are you talking about?
It does kind of show that he's not really interested in that stuff, and the vast majority of his other content clearly shows a lack of understanding about how the working class struggle intersects with the civil rights that he supports. What's also interesting to point out is that while Xanderhal says that Destiny saved him from the alt-right pipeline, Xanderhal doesn't appear to have actually ever been debated on his alt-right views. He simply saw an example of right-wing views
he didn't have to be. Okay, let's
being torn to shreds in the form of Destiny debating a white supremacist. The major difference between this and other forms of de-radicalization is that it simply made him not a Nazi. It didn't make him a communist, an anarchist, or even a socialist. The more and more that Xanderhal...
Because, going from one really harmful belief to a more milquetoast belief isn't good enough for him. You don't have to have your views debated directly. In fact, okay. So here's the good thing that this man does not understand, it seems, about seeing other people be debated. When you are debated specifically, when you have an argument with anybody on any specific issue, your guard is naturally up. Why? Because you're being confronted directly. But if you're seeing somebody else be confronted on issues that you hold and you believe, you then get to look at that from the outside and come to different conclusions that you might have had you been more on a defense about it. And I can give you, hopefully I can find some really good examples about this. No, it wasn't. When I was deconstructing my religious beliefs, one of the things that I did was I started looking at debates. I actually really got into, for a minute, this guy named Frank Turek. He had this series called Cross-Examined, and he did debates with, people. And what I found was that as I was listening to these debates, and I started on Frank's side, I realized that the other guy is really making some good points. I wasn't being attacked directly, so my guard wasn't up. It didn't have to be up. My views were being challenged, but I didn't feel like I was directly being attacked, so I was more willing to listen to the other side. And there were some things that I really take away from that, like the concept of morality that, let me see if I can find. There were some quotes that I really took away from these debates, and there were similar ones with Richard Dawkins, all sorts of people. Let me see. Who said this? Oh, well, okay, originally Steven Weinberg. With or without religion, good people can behave well and bad people can do evil. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion. That and several other quotes that I heard, several pieces that I really held on to, made a lot of sense for me. And these were things that I had heard before, like, if you need religion to have good morals, you don't actually need religion, you just have terrible morals. I used to believe things like if I wasn't religious, I'd be a horrible person. And I think a lot of people are afraid of that happening if they are religious. I think I've become a much better person morally because I've left religion, because I can instead of looking at what my imaginary friend says I'm supposed to do, I can look at what's actually going to benefit the whole of society and the people around me, my community, and all those different things. But I had some debates with people about these kind of things. A couple weeks before I really started exploring this stuff, I had a debate with a friend of mine. A friend of mine was dating this other person briefly, and we had talked about religion a little bit, and my friend's date just railed into me about religion and morality and all this stuff, and I was completely on the defensive. But when I was looking at these debates, I wasn't on the defensive. Even if somebody like Destiny or Vosh or Xanderhal or Hunter Avalon or anyone is talking with you about, or other people about a issue that if they are confronting somebody on an issue, and Vosh has talked about this before too, you're not changing necessarily the belief of the person that you're debating. The goal isn't to change them. They're set. The goal is to change the audience's mind, or at least give it a fair shot. But these are things that DJ Mule doesn't understand, and it baffles me because I am an example of somebody who this exact tactic worked. This helped me to open up my mind and look at things from a different perspective and realize, hey, maybe I'm wrong. And then eventually, maybe that's okay, because now maybe I can actually learn. I can accept things that I don't understand rather than believing everything's some spiritual warfare and all kind of things like that. But these are things that DJ Mule doesn't seem to understand or respect because he's never had to challenge his beliefs. He doesn't respect people that has, like Xanderhal. But it's a very important thing to do. And yes, debates are a very good way of encouraging people to challenge their own beliefs internally.